hair is recovering from a lot of plays, a lot of acting, a lot of being on stage. Gordon is up speaking in Westchester today, and Fred's sick. So you got me this morning. And I am a last minute change. And I want to tell you something. I'm working with scraps and fragments today because I started preparing this last night, about 7 o'clock in Trenton, New Jersey, as I was traveling. And after hearing the worship songs today, I think I know God had a plan. So here we go. There's a verse that God gave me on restoration. Ephesians 2, chapter 10. Ephesians chapter 2, verse 10. For we are God's masterpiece. He created us anew in Christ Jesus so that we can do good things that He planned for us long ago. Love that verse. I'm an artist. Musician. I guess I qualify as an artist. In my early career, I've spent a lot of time in product development, which means I'm a problem solver. I'm a deep thinker. I stare at things and say, how do we do that? I remember we won an award for a Franklin Mint piece many, many years ago. I don't know if you follow what they used to do in the newspaper, they sold the stuff. They had a little statue of Dorothy, the Wizard of Oz. And it was a magnificent piece with this beautiful gingham dress from the movie. And we had to figure out how to, in ceramics, recreate the gingham dress on a multifaceted surface. And the lines were so fine that in Macau, where the plant was, where they actually did the actual production, we knew that there was no way they could hand paint it. So we had to figure out how this blank white naked statue and the gingham artwork, how do we transfer it from one to the other? And we were sitting there. It was a really hot day and the air conditioning wasn't working very well. And my boss, who was a ceramic engineer, we were sitting there eating popsicles, staring at this. We're eating popsicles. And we got to the end of the popsicles and we looked at each other. I looked at John, John looked at me, we stared at the popsicle sticks. And we looked back at each other and he goes, get a roll of masking tape, quick! And we sat there and we took masking tape with popsicle sticks and slowly put the masking tape all over this 9-inch tall figurine where the dress was. And then we took an X-Acto knife and we slowly cut apart every flat surface that we could find and laid it out like a Color Forms, magical thing where you're going to take the little pieces and put it on the thing. And we numbered each and every one of them. And that's how we printed in ceramic pigments the design that these little ladies in Macau would take and soak off and put onto the surface of the thing. They would fire it at 2,000 degrees, and you had this perfect representation of Dorothy's dress from the Wizard of Oz. I spent a lot of my youth in dusty museum rooms. In the bowels of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, there is a huge room with more tchotchkes than you can ever imagine, where people sit around and think, how can we make something that we can sell to people who are coming to sing King Tut? Just crazy stuff. Well, listen, you're kind of like that naked statue. And God is working in your life to restore you to the glory that He knows that you are of His creation. Rick Renner, in the commentary on this passage, let me bring it up real quick, says this: the Greek word of masterpiece is poem. It comes from the same word in reference to a poet. This Greek word would denote one who has an extraordinary ability to write or create a literary masterpiece. Because Paul uses the word poema to explain what happened when you became a child of God. It emphatically means that on that day you got saved, God poured forth his most powerful and creative effort to make you new. Once God was finished making you new, you became a masterpiece, skillfully and artfully created in Jesus Christ. There is nothing cheap about what God is doing. I'll read you a story this morning. It was written by a theologian, David Hull. He wrote it a couple years ago, and it really blessed me. How do you see yourself? It's the story of restoration. One of the world's most beloved paintings is Rembrandt's Return of the Prodigal Son, which is on display in the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg. Now imagine for a moment that a group of men who were drunken in a blind rage break into the museum, and on that night, in drunken revelry, in order to deface precious pieces of artwork, just because they could. Well, completely oblivious to the value of a Rembrandt painting, they ripped it off the wall, slashed the painting diagonally from top frame corner to the bottom frame corner. They poured cheap beer over it. They stomped on the painting with muddy boots, leaving footprints on the canvas. When the curators discovered this, they were blown away. They were distraught. They were heartbroken. In their eyes, this once priceless piece of artwork was nothing more than a piece of trash. It was a dishonor to the masterpiece that communicated these deep truths about the world and about theological depth. Deemed no longer worthy to be put on display because it was tarnished and vandalized, they put it to auction. And people from all over came to bid on this once masterpiece for just having the bragging rights or sentimental value. Imagine for a moment Rembrandt was still alive. Seeing and hearing about what happened to his masterpiece, he was furious. And he was so frustrated over the fact that people disregarded the work of this great piece of art that he created. So he sent a representative to the auction to reclaim the painting. And when he arrived, he encountered men and women who could only see the painting for its present value. Trash. It was beleaguered, disheveled, limping, hanging there, sort of half out of its frame. And as such, their bidding was a pittance. Just cents on the dollar of what it was originally worth. Now, Rembrandt's representative had clear instructions from the artist, and the groom grew silent, deathly silent, when he boldly bid full face value for the piece. He took it, this vandalized piece, took it to the artist. People were just blown away that someone would pay such a high price for a piece of trash. Now, when Rembrandt got this piece of artwork back, his heart was full of fury and sorrow. His life's work was reduced to trash by callous and dispassionate actions of those who could not see any value in it whatsoever. And yet, although he was blind to the slashed canvas, the ground in mud, and the odor of stale beer, his mind's eye, he could still see the painting as it was originally intended to be. So he began this painstaking process of restoring the painting. He weaved together along the slash line with this fine thread where there was still a scar, but the slash was fixed. He cleaned the mud from the canvas, and where the paint had been distorted, he began matching the paint in hues from his memory as he touched it up. And after many, many long hours of laborious work and sweat from his brow, it was finished, completely restored. His representative came, stood shoulder to shoulder with him, and admired the restored masterpiece and declared, although I believe in your vision that you shared with me and was willing to pay the full price to restore this painting, I can see now the painting restored is even more beautiful than when you first painted it. Putting his hand on Rembrandt's shoulder, he said, "You're the greatest artist I've ever known. All well-known artists have left masterpieces for the world to appreciate, but you are the only one I have ever seen restore a masterpiece defaced and destroyed to a more sublime beauty than its original form." This is the story of the gospel. This is the story about you and me. God is an artist. He created humanity to be put on display for all to see, intending for us to communicate deep truths about the world around us, as well as the artist who made us. Like the painting, our lives have been defaced and vandalized by callous and indifferent actions of people, whether others or ourselves, that betray the complete lack of understanding in our intrinsic value. As a way, people in general, and that most others can see the slashes. I hate when a page doesn't line up perfectly with what I'm going to say. The stains, the disfigurement that mar and discourse the intended masterpiece. Even though there are people close to us can see the glimpses of what the artist intended, on the comment of these beautiful brushstrokes, hear this masterful blending of color. Unfortunately, we often do not have ears to hear those who elevate words of affirmation to suggest anything remotely resembling beauty or quality within us. So we are at auction ourselves to the highest bidder. We are desperate to be affirmed and assessed with value, even if the prices that are offered by others are insulting and just a pittance of what we truly are valued to be. Thankfully, God's representative, Jesus Christ, walked into the world's auction house, observed God's defaced and tarnished masterpiece being auctioned off for pennies, informed by the vision of what the painting was intended to be, and guided by the desires of the artist, he boldly paid the full price for the original painting, silencing every other competing voice. See, humanity is the pinnacle of God's life's work. Thus, Jesus laid down his life in order to restore God's work. When God looks at us, when he looks at you, when he looks at me, he's not unaware of the slashes and the disfigurement and the stains and the odors. And his heart is full both of fury and sorrow at what has befallen his masterpiece. And yet, this does not deter him, because he sees you as you are, restored, full value, fully completed, fully restored, as if you never sinned. Even though those slashes have been mended, there's still scars. We see them. God sees them. Although whether any master artist, whether Rembrandt or Van Gogh or Da Vinci, can leave us with a masterpiece to delight in, only the master artist can take a masterpiece once defaced and destroyed and restore it to more beauty than it was originally intended. This is the gospel. This is the good news. This is why the series was called The Good Place. Don't settle for selling yourself for pennies on the dollar. There is one who's already paid a full price in order for you to be restored. See, God looks at you as a masterpiece, something greater than he originally intended. Don't buy the lie of all the ways your life has been marred in pain and suffering, whether by your own hands or those of others. You are not a cheap piece of trash. There is a master artist who sees both what has befallen you, but also sees what you've intended to be. Allow him to restore you. Restore your life to, once again, that people will marvel at what he has done with you. Don't be discouraged, because restoration takes time. One of the rooms at the Metropolitan, they have artists that are restoring works. And I'd be in New York about once every 5 weeks. And I'd go to the Met. It's cool because when I went to the Met, you come into the main entrance and you go off to the right and there's the Egyptian gallery. And right behind these marble obelisks and pillars and stuff, there's this little hallway that look at just a little hallway. You go in the door and there's an elevator. You take the elevator down to the bowels of the museum, and that's where they are. I was watching this over a course of a year, where this gal was cleaning this painting and touching it up. But I'd walk past the room, the clean room that she was working in, every few weeks that I was there. She'd be just a little bit further across the painting. Just a little bit. That's what it takes to restore your life. It's a little bit at a time. God is working. Don't be dismayed. There are a couple verses I'm going to share with you. Luke 7, 11 through 15. Soon afterwards, Jesus went to the city called Nain, and his disciples were going along with him, accompanied by a larger crowd. Now, as he approached the gate of the city, a dead man was being carried out, the only son of a mother. She was now a widow, and a sizable crowd from the city was with her. And when the Lord saw her, he felt compassion for her, and said to her, "Do not weep any more." And he came up and touched the coffin, and the bearers came to a halt. And he said, "Young man, I say to you, arise." And the dead man sat up and began to speak. And Jesus gave him back to his mother. Ephesians 2:1 says, "Once you were dead because of your disobedience and your many sins." Colossians 2, verses 13 says, "You were dead because of your sins, and because of your sinful nature was not yet cut away, like circumcision. And then God made you alive with Christ, and he forgave you of all your sins." That's restoration. Some of you are in the process of being restored. Some of you haven't chosen yet to put yourself on the easel to let the great master work. And I pray that today will be a day that you decide to follow him and allow him to have his way. Let's pray. Father, have your way with our hearts. For those who are in the midst of being restored by you, O Lord, give us patience with ourselves. Help us to see ourselves as you see us, as forgiven. For those who have yet to bow their knee to you and say, "I want you, Lord, to restore me, to make me whole again." But Lord, they would just pray the simple prayer right here and right now. Lord, I invite you into my heart. I give you my heart. I give you my soul. Make you master of my life. I am sinful and wicked and blind. Restore me, please, O Lord. Have your way with my life now in Christ's name. Lord, we pray these prayers. We love you and we thank you for all that you've done for us in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen.